I call this meeting of the Committee on Energy, Finance, and Policy to order. We have a quorum. Just to give folks a little bit of a reminder, so if you are going to be a testifier today, you'll be limited about 90 seconds, so please be really concise in your comments, and if it's a previous person has maybe said something that's pretty close to what you're saying, either say something a little different, or you're free to take yourself, if your response has been already stated, you're more than welcome to take yourself off the list. And as we're bringing folks to the front, we'll kind of I'll read a couple names ahead of time so that you can kind of move up to the front and either grab one of the spare seats that's up there. And thank you all for coming today. So our first item of business is the approval of the minutes. May I have a motion to approve the minutes for the meeting of February 18th, 2025? So move, Representative Sexton moves approval of the minutes from February 18th, 2025. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? The motion prevails and the minutes from February 11th are approved. Next before the committee we have House File 845. Representative Baker has a bill of net energy metering provisions, and Representative Baker moves that House File 845 be placed on the general register. Representative Baker, I believe you have an amendment, an author's amendment to get the bill in the condition that you would like the bill to be in.
Yes, I do, Mr. Chair and members. Thank you for allowing me to make some changes to this bill. This is a really important bill to make sure we get it right so that we can support the kind of businesses that want to be thriving in Minnesota, but also to make sure that our ratepayers are not overpaying one more penny than they have to for the rates that they are currently paying. So with the amendment that I'm bringing forward to you, Mr. Chairman, is to make sure that the folks who have agreements and contracts already in place with their local developer or their co-op or their muni, that doesn't change anything what we do. So I want to make sure that the grandfathering amendment that I'm bringing forward is accepted, and that's part of my bill, Mr. Chair. All right. And I would appreciate your support.
All right, Representative Baker moves the A1 author's amendment. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion prevails. Rep. Baker, your bill is amended. If you want to begin your presentation on your bill.
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Again, this net metering bill is important to get the rates established for some of our smaller utility companies around the state of Minnesota. Minnesota is the only state in the country that does require co-ops, which means their members, which are the owners of the co-ops, to pay a retail rate for excess generation from distributed solar facilities. Retail rate for a wholesale product. That's what makes that math work. I want to make sure that we tell both members and the public what this bill is clearly does not do. This does not eliminate net metering. This bill does not reduce the eligibility size for net metering systems. It does not reduce monthly net metering compensation rates. It does not leave any customer-generated energy uncompensated. But here's what the bill actually does. First, it would take us off that island that we're all by ourselves in the country that states that it requires co-ops, again, remembering that's our members and our owners, to pay retail rate compensation for excess distributed generation. And number two, it aligns us with the other 16 states that provide a wholesale compensation, but without going as far as 33 states that give no compensation. Second, it would also reduce costs to the co-op members by no longer requiring co-ops to pay their retail rate for wholesale power that can be purchased for far less at a wholesale price. Third, it would reduce the uneconomic incentive to build oversized generation systems that are much larger than needed by members to offset the purchases from their co-op. Finally, it would reduce inequities because it would no longer require those who don't have solar systems on their property to subsidize those that do. or those with smaller systems to subsidize those with much larger ones. And number two, leaves room on the grid, which has infinite capacity for more members to add solar to their property. That's the overview, Mr. Chair and members. This bill, again, it's an important bill to get this right. By my amendment, I'm showing as well that I'm serious about trying to get it so that it's not going to devastate current members or consumers of solar that have made those investments. I want to make sure that they know that we're looking out for those agreements that have been made. But I think there's a lot of good future for getting this right so that the co-ops and those members can provide support and help developments come forward if we get a fair deal that's fair to everybody, which includes the members. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'm happy to turn it over to testifiers.
Sounds good. Representative Baker, I believe you have a few testifiers that are here to at least start the conversation. We have Justin Janez, Ron Meyer, and Assistant Commissioner Lisa Paul-Lo-Switch. I think I hit that. So if you want to state your name for the record, and I'm going to relearn how to say that name in between, so thank you.
Just like Jimmy Johns, Justin Johns. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Justin Johns. I'm the president and CEO of East Central Energy. We're a member-owned cooperative serving 67,000 homes and businesses in East Central Minnesota and northwestern Wisconsin. We serve some of the most destitute financial areas of the state, some of the poorest counties. Current net metering laws really allow members to install systems that provide beyond their needs, and they are exporting large amounts of excess energy to the grid at a rate that's far beyond what the market would dictate. This shifts cost to members without solar, many of whom can't afford it or lack the ability to install it because of their property situation. I'd like to add that our engineers have studied the performance of these arrays. You might hear people say that the performance of these arrays reduces our peak demand, and the reality is they do at certain times, but that's a very limited part of the year, and it really financially doesn't equate to the things that we're doing on the wholesale side. Cooperatives do support the right of individuals to generate their own power and to offset their own energy use. However, cooperative members should not be forced to pay inflated prices for excess energy when we can procure it much more affordably from utility scale wind and solar. We currently pay members between 12 and 13 cents per kilowatt hour for excess energy while securing power purchase agreements for utility scale solar projects under 6 cents. We're paying twice as much for this excess energy from the projects compared to the projects that we're doing at utility scale. The current law disproportionately benefits a narrow special interest group, primarily the solar installation industry. The voices you won't hear today are those of hardworking Minnesotans who rely on us for affordable, reliable electricity. My responsibility is to represent them, control unnecessary costs, and eliminate these outdated subsidies that shift financial burdens onto those members. This bill takes a common sense approach by encouraging size to load installations, ensuring solar systems are designed to offset a member's own usage rather than maximizing exports. This reduces unfair cost shifts and prioritizes the lowest cost solutions for all members. Let me be clear, our cooperative supports renewable energy, and we, along with our G&T, are investing in wind and solar. But we must do so in a way that benefits all members, not just those who can afford private solar. This legislation ensures our approach to distributed generation is fair, responsible, and financially sustainable. I urge your support for this bill to promote energy policies that work for all Minnesotans. Thank you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Representative Kraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Johns, how many customers do you have that are have installed solar arrays that are substantially larger than their?
I think it's somewhere between 500 and 600.
500 and 600 customers that are
That have solar installed at their home in one way, shape, or form.
Okay, and how many of those have substantially more installed than they're using?
Sure. It's probably a percentage of it, 10% maybe.
The chair, my apologies.
But I mean, I guess the question is, how far do you need to walk down the path the wrong direction? I mean, the subsidy exists, right? So if we're paying 13 cents versus 6, it is a small percentage, but it's growing all the time. This business it's an entrepreneurial business. There's a lot of opportunity, and it really is creating a false economy around rooftop solar.
Representative Kraft.
Mr. Chair, thank you, Mr. Johnson. I'm just trying to understand the facts.
Sure.
Right, and you're talking about concerns of the future and it growing, and I understand that. I'm just trying to understand the facts, and what I hear from you is you don't know exactly how many are, and I would love to get that data from you following up.
No,
Mr. Janish.
Mr. Chair, between 500 and 600 installations, and I would guess about 10% of those are over-generating to a point where they're receiving income from their neighbors.
Representative Kraft.
Thank you.
Representative Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, thank you for being here and giving, shedding some light on what's happening at an actual utility. So you had mentioned that 500 to 600 customers have rooftop solar. Can you remind us how many customers do you have in your territory?
67,000.
Mr. Jans.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, 67,000.
All right. Any other quick questions? All right. Mr. Meyer, if you'd like to introduce yourself to the committee.
Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. I thank you for the opportunity to testify on this topic. My name is Ron Meyer. I am the CEO of McLeod Cooperative Power, headquartered in Glencoe, Minnesota. Sorry, showing my old colors. We are a smaller electric distribution cooperative serving just over 7,000 services across McLeod and parts of Renville, Sibley, and Carver counties. Our cooperative is dedicated to providing safe, reliable, and affordable electricity to our rural communities. I'm here to express my support for updating Minnesota's net metering laws to reflect today's energy landscape. Under current statutes, my cooperative must compensate members who generate more electricity than they use at the average retail rate, rather than at wholesale market rates. Excess energy is purchased at a price above its actual value to the cooperative, creating an unintended cost shift onto the rest of the members, many of whom do not have the resources to install distributed generation or solar up on their rooftops. The impact of this policy has grown significantly for my cooperative. In 2019, MCPA had 28 members, generating in excess of 206,000 kilowatt hours, and they were compensated just over $24,000 for those excess generation. In 2024, we have 91 members, generating close to 1.3 million kilowatt hours, and they were compensated $160,000. The dramatic increase amplifies the financial burden upon my cooperative. The proposed legislation will help keep this imbalance from growing, aligning compensation for excess generation more closely with wholesale electric rates. It will also lower unnecessary costs for my membership, ensuring people always pay their fair share. Most importantly, it will create a more sustainable and balanced framework for distributed generation, allowing even more of my members to install their own generation without shifting costs onto their neighbors. These laws were initially designed to stimulate the adoption of distributed generation when the market was still developing. However, that market has matured and technology has advanced. What once served as an incentive is now an outdated policy that unfairly burdens other cooperative members with increasing costs. My members expect fairness, ensuring that costs are equally shared across the membership. We support policies encouraging renewable energy while maintaining financial responsibility to all of our cooperative members. Updating net metering laws to ensure fair compensation at the wholesale level would align with this principle and help keep electricity affordable for everyone. Thank you for your time and consideration, and I do urge support for this bill. I am happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Meyer. If we have Assistant Commissioner Paulish. Oh, Tapke. Oh, there you go. I didn't see it. Representative Tapke.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. A quick question before you go is, like, you said that the, I forget exactly what your wording was that you used, but the market for this has been established and it's no longer necessary to do that. What metric are you using to decide that it has already been established and the market is as large as it should be? Like, what is your intent there and where this is or could be going?
Mr. Meyer.
I base that upon actually my background from coming from a Colorado cooperative. I've only recently come to Minnesota in 2020, but also just considering the fact that I saw almost a 500% increase in net metering accounts at my Minnesota co-op.
Representative Tapke, follow up? All right. Assistant Commissioner Paulish, to your testimony. And then if we could get George Damon to come to the table as well. Thank you.
Chair Swedzinski, committee members, Representative Baker. My name is Lissa Polish, and I serve as the Assistant Commissioner of federal and state initiatives at the Minnesota Department of Commerce, Division of Energy Resources. We appreciate the opportunity to be here today. We do not disagree with the basic premise driving this bill, and we are working closely with our partners at the rural electric cooperatives to find the best way to move forward. Co-op members, or muni members, who install solar that exceeds their load can indeed impose additional costs on other members and customers. As we move forward, though, we are in many ways talking about fundamentally changing net metering and how it would work for future adoption. Net metering, it turns out, is complicated. We should be very intentional about how we approach this bill and the broader conversation. We have a 2040 law that will require broader adoption of renewables of all types and sizes, as well as additional clean, firm resources, including storage. When it comes to solar, we like to think of it as a yes and approach. We need all of the scales of solar. Distributed energy systems can be an important part of meeting our clean electricity needs. And with that context in mind, we come not in opposition to this concept, but with some concerns about this approach and the impact it might have on helping us collectively meet these needs. We think it warrants more discussion, and we thank both MREA and MMUA and Representative Baker for your work on bringing this conversation to the fore. We appreciate already the changes around the grandfathering in of existing systems. We think that it is also essential to think about the projects that will have already submitted an interconnection application into the process and grandfathering those in as well. In addition, we've had some concerns around the change in the definition of capacity that could be construed to disincentivize storage. We understand that that was not the intent of the bill and have been having conversations already to move forward in a way that is productive on that front and that acknowledges the new rule-making proceeding that the Public Utilities Commission has recently authorized. The broader concept that we think warrants further discussion is around lifting the cap on net metered systems from 40 kW to a megawatt. As we ask the electric system to do more and more, we don't want people to lock in an undersized system to meet the growing demand of either their individual household or their local business. We are wrestling with this demand in the electric sector at all scales. We've had stagnating growth and even declining demand in the electric sector. But as we contemplate everything from individuals buying and then charging their electric cars to hyperscaler data centers, we need to make sure that we are incentivizing an adequate build-out of our clean energy resources to meet that demand. Put simply, we just are gonna need more of these resources on our grid. So long as these systems are installed and compensated in keeping with the definition of a net metered facility, and that any excess generation is compensated at a fair market value, larger systems offsetting load could provide a pathway to advance more distributed and cost-effective solar throughout Minnesota. We absolutely understand the drive to introduce this bill, and we think a bit more conversation is necessary to get to a solution that addresses the real concerns that brought this forward, while also addressing the imperatives that we face to accelerate deployment of clean energy resources at all scales. We look forward to a continuing dialogue.
Thank you, Assistant Commissioner, for your testimony. George Damon, and then Paul Kriedermacher. 90 seconds. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Kwasinski and committee members and Representative Baker. My name is George Damon. I'm Director of Government Affairs for Clean Energy Economy Minnesota, also known as SEAM. SEAM is an industry-led, nonpartisan, nonprofit organization representing the business voice of clean energy in Minnesota. Our 70-plus member companies employ tens of thousands statewide, many of whom work on solar projects, would be directly affected by net metering changes. We are here to express concerns about HF 845, a proposal that would make significant changes to Minnesota's net metering policies. These changes redefine key terms, drastically adjust compensation structures, and will adversely affect homeowners, farmers, and small businesses who have decided to take control of their energy future by choosing solar. The proposal discourages solar adoption and therefore undercuts consumer choice and restricts energy independence. It will put Minnesota at a competitive disadvantage as we work to retain, grow, and attract clean energy businesses and market opportunities. At a time when our state is facing massive load growth from electrification, data centers, and more, and while working towards 100% carbon-free electricity by 2040 state law, we should be expanding, not restricting access to for Minnesotans to choose rooftop solar and distributed solar. The change in this proposal would put over 5,000 well-paying solar jobs at risk. We agree with our business members who will testify in support of alternative solutions rather than taking this drastic step to overhaul Minnesota's net metering policies. Instead of abrupt changes, a more measured approach, such as conducting a comprehensive cost of service study to assess the true financial impact of net metering at the average retail rate, or enacting policies that accelerate storage deployment for residential and small commercial solar users would be a more effective path forward. SEAM and our business members are ready to collaborate with stakeholders to address the concerns about the current net metering system. However, the changes proposed in 845 are too drastic and would cripple Minnesota's solar industry, stifling its enormous potential for growth and innovation. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Credemarker? And then Jenny Warmuth.
Yep, Paul Kreidemacher. Good afternoon. Excuse me. Good afternoon. My name is Paul Kreidemacher, and I'm the owner of Min Solar located in southeast Minnesota. I started the solar business just over 10 years ago now from the request of several local farmers looking into this technology. First, I'd like to point out that if you were to go to the Minnesota Rural Electric Association website, you would find their top story being this here. Latest report shows Minnesota electric grids at high risk of power shortages. So if we're at the brink of power shortages, why are they trying to change the state net metering policy to crush small distributed generation projects? And why which are mostly solar projects these days? If there's a power shortage, they should really be promoting or incentivizing Minnesotans to help with constrained electrical needs. Let's step back and look at the definition of, or the premise of a rural electric cooperative. Electric cooperatives are an organization that's member-owned with the purpose to distribute safe and electricity to its members. Well, if it was truly member-owned, why would they not want to allow their members to invest into their cooperatives and produce reliable energy for the rest of the members through these small systems? I am also here today to make sure that the Minnesota House is aware that it isn't only these liberal Prius drivers that are building solar projects in Minnesota, but also large numbers of Republican and Democratic farmers around the countryside that have been heavily investing into these systems. I personally have built over 400 of these net metering systems in southern Minnesota for these small farmers who are struggling to survive. While these electric cooperatives are probably working hard to convince you that they cannot survive by continuing to pay retail electric rates for excess power, these
Mr. Credemarker, if you'd kind of wrap it up, that'd be
Okay.
great. Thank you.
Ultimately, these unnecessary changes will ruin small businesses such as my own and others around the state. And I thank you for the time listening to me today, and I hope you think about the impact this will have across the state and communities and vote no to the proposed changes.
Thank you. Jenny Warmuth, and then Bill Black, if you would want to come up to the testifiers table. Thank you.
Good afternoon, all. Thank you, Chair, members of the committee, and representative for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Jenna Warmuth, and I'm speaking on behalf of Rewiring America as the Senior Manager for Midwest Regional Policy. I'm also a resident of Northern Minnesota. Rewiring America is the leading electrification nonprofit focused on electrifying our homes, communities, and businesses. We oppose the energy metering provisions modifications currently proposed in House File 845 because well-researched, fairly compensated net metering programs promote distributed energy solutions that can help to empower household energy independence. The household's ability to make independent decisions about their energy use is central to our work at Rewiring America because about 42% of energy-related emissions stem from decisions we often make around our kitchen table. How we heat and cool our homes, heat our water, wash and dry our clothes, etc. While the electricity generation sector has seen significant emission declines in Minnesota in recent years, residential sector's emissions have significantly increased, underscoring the need for families to have more, not fewer, tools in their toolbox for electrification efforts. Rewiring America's recent Breathe Easy Health Impacts report concludes that household electrification combined with an electricity grid that is continuously getting cleaner will reduce total pollution from fine particulate matter and its precursors by 300,000 tons a year, the equivalent of taking 40 million cars off the road. These improved health outcomes resulting from household electrification translate to about $40 billion in health benefits nationally every year. The
Mrs.
health
Warmuth, if you'd just wrap her up.
Okay,
Thank
yep.
you.
The health benefits and associated savings that will be captured by Minnesotans is directly correlated to the energy consumption decisions they are able to make within their household. This means making use of assets we already have, as well as providing tools for households that make decisions that empower their energy independence, including the continued build-out of rooftop solar and battery storage. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Bill Black and then Buff Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Bill Black, representing the Minnesota Municipal Utilities Association. Minnesota has 120 municipal electric utilities with a median size of 1,350 meters. That's the size of a municipal utility like Grand Marais, Ortonville, Hawley, or Spring Valley. Mr. Chair, I know Representative Jones is going to ask it and others are thinking it, so I'm going to jump right to it. What is the problem this legislation seeks to solve? It is this: average income people and those who can't afford their utility bills are forced to pay their neighbors for producing far more energy than those neighbors can use, while they are doing so precisely to profit from their non-generating neighbors. And I don't need to tell you, those who can afford to overbuild solar can already afford their utility bills. Now, most solar owners do not do this, and this bill will not hurt them in the least. In fact, if their systems are just big enough to have some, but not too many generating credits left at the end of the year, they'll be better off under the changes in this bill. This bill surgically removes a growing problem without penalizing those who generate their own electricity, even if they sell a reasonable amount of excess to their utility as the law intends. The net metering statute is a very complicated one. It is going to take some explaining for everyone to understand how it currently works and what these changes would do. But I assure you that the group that suggested these changes to Representative Baker put a great deal of thought into making them fair and focused and in keeping with the spirit of the law.
Mr. Black, if you would just kind of sum her right up, that'd be great. Thank you.
Will do. Mr. Chair and members, I don't know what the 14 testifiers with solar in their name are going to say, but I know how this bill affects them. It's no mystery, and it's not surprising from a business perspective why they would oppose it. What I don't see is any consumer advocates opposing it. Granted, this only affects consumer-owned utility customers, and they are only about 40% of the state. But the co-ops and I are here testifying on their behalf, and I hope you will see that a vote for this bill is a vote in support of them and not a vote against solar. Thank you.
All right, thank you for your testimony. So Buff Grace and then Gabe Chan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name's Buff Grace. I serve solar programs at Minnesota Interfaith Power and Light. We serve thousands of Minnesotans of various faith traditions who are united in their concern about climate change and its devastating consequences. Our congregations come from all over the state, International Falls to Grand Rapids to Wilmar to Rochester, Winona, the Twin Cities, St. Peter, Mankato, all over the state. And I just want to, while we're thinking about yardage here on the field, I want to remind you that the goalposts are outside the stadium and the stadium's burning. And this is the concern of the people that I represent. People of faith are worried about climate change and they're taking action to stop it, like installing solar. And they look to you to make laws to support them to do that. People all across your districts are concerned. Mr. Chair, in your district, 66% of people know that global warming is happening, and more than half know that it's caused by human activity. That's the same across all your districts of the districts that are rural and municipal utilities. In other districts, those stats are higher, like 80%. We are opposed to House File 845. This bill goes in the wrong direction. It would slow solar uptake and disadvantage residents in rural Minnesota. Solar is a great, with battery backup, it's a great option for resilience. We're supporting resilience work all across the state, trying to build resilience hubs. People with solar and battery backup have better resilience than similar oil and gas technology.
If you could wrap it up, that would be great.
This committee should be doing everything you can to deploy as much clean energy as fast as possible. This bill goes in the wrong direction. It's a waste of time, and it's just pencil sharpening while the earth burns. Your lives depend on getting this right. Your constituents' lives depend on it. Our children and our grandchildren's lives depend on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So, Mr. Chan, and then Sarah Meridian.
Thank you, Chair and members of the committee, for the opportunity to testify this afternoon on net metering reform. My name is Gabe Chan. I'm an associate professor of science, technology, and environmental policy at the University of Minnesota. Here today in my own capacity as a researcher. What this bill would do is it preserves the ability to offset load with self-generation. And what changes with this bill is how net export from distributed generation to the grid is treated. And so I think the key question is, in considering this bill, whether or not net export to the grid and self-consumption should be treated by statute equivalently. In my opinion, I do think it's reasonable to treat self-consumption and grid export from distributed generation differently, particularly as the electric system changes to accommodate new electric loads while maintaining affordability and progressing towards carbon neutrality. Under our current net metering law, self-consumption and export are treated equivalently. Both offset the retail rate. And retail rates are based on historic or embedded costs. In 1983, when the Public Utility Commission established net metering rules, it was acknowledged this would always be imperfect. But in 2013, the Minnesota legislature recognized that distributed generation does have long-run value to the utility, to consumers, and to society when it created the value of solar tariff. And what the value of solar tariff got right, and what policymakers in 1983 got right, in my opinion, is that distributed energy resources create long-run value. And so to move towards more distributed energy resources, which we need because central station power and transmission lines can't be built in enough as quickly as we need for all this load growth, we need a holistic perspective on how distributed resources can create value for everyone. Co-ops and munis, through their local control and rate-setting authority, should be leveraging distributed resources like solar to provide the most long-run value that they can. And they can do this by integrating distributed generation into their planning processes.
If you could wrap up your testimony, thank you.
Thank you. I think my last point is that co-ops and munis are experimenting with the distributed generation, and they need additional support to do so to realize that full long-run value.
Thank you. And then next up, Patty O'Keefe, or Bobby King. Sorry, thank you. If you want to introduce yourself for the record, thank you.
Yes, hello. Thank you, Chair Swedinsky, committee members. My name is Sarah Meridian. I'm the Government Relations and Policy Director for CURE. I appreciate the opportunity to testify on House File 845 today. At CURE, we deeply care about rural electric cooperatives and have worked side by side with them to secure historic investments from the federal government. We have a deep appreciation for our cooperatives' adherence to the 7 cooperative principles and the work they do for their member owners and our state. Cooperatives and municipal utilities are the best place for member owners and constituents to achieve energy democracy and work together to produce and consume clean energy in community. CURE acknowledges, like others today, that net metering is not a perfect system and understands the concerns shared previously. Net metering has been debated over the last several decades and has been changed numerous times since 2010. But this instability makes it difficult for both electricity providers and consumers to accomplish long-range planning. Without clarity, transparency, and consistency around how to set truly fair repayment rates, disputes about net metering will continue. For these reasons, CURE believes the more appropriate action at this time is to commission a study that could, among other things, identify specific concerns, collect necessary information, and analyze potential solutions. We'd be happy to work with legislators and other stakeholders on such a bill. The goal of a successful net metering policy should be to ensure cooperative and municipal utilities are compensated fairly, that member owners are compensated fairly, and that distributed generation is accelerated in its deployment. Until a more robust analysis has been completed, CURE opposes the kind of wholesale elimination of net metering proposed by House File 845. I would direct you to our written comments for our specific concerns with the bill. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And then on deck, we have Patty O'Keefe.
Hello, my name is Bobby King. I'm the Minnesota State Director for Solar United Neighbors. We work in Minnesota to educate folks and bring them together and through solar buying groups to leverage their buying power to go solar. We work a lot in rural Minnesota. We've just been bringing people together in Morris, Fergus Falls, and Moorhead. I want to say the type of people that we work with need a little help going solar. We're talking about farmers, small business owners, people on the verge of retirement that want to lock in their energy costs. These are people that are committed to living and being a part of their community. They're co-op members, they're muni members, and they like the law the way it is now. I do want to say I met with Representative Baker yesterday with some others and raised concerns, and he committed to keeping and working with us to address some of them, and I really appreciate that and appreciate your amendment. It moves things in the right direction. We're still opposed. I want to take a little bit of time I have to talk about the idea of the cost shift, because I just don't think it exists at the current level of solar penetration, and I just wanted to walk through how it works a little bit. So when I have a system under 40 kW, that's a relatively small system in the scheme of solar in the world. On my home, farm, or small business, I produce more than I need at the moment. It goes back onto the grid. It goes onto the grid. My neighbor uses it, the energy I produced, but the rural electric co-op or the muni charges that person retail power, charges them the retail rate for the power that they didn't deliver or produce. So it makes sense that I get a credit for that. And we think the current system is fair and works well that way. So you see on this handout from MREA, they talk about a solar co-op paying out $140,000 to solar owners, but they don't show the income. There was income. They charged somebody for power that they didn't deliver. And also, if you take a look at this.
If you would be kind enough to wrap up your testimony, that'd be
I
great.
will. I
Thank
just
you.
got about 30 more seconds. If you take a look at the bill, you'll see that in existing statute, co-ops are allowed to charge fees to solar owners. So that's another source of income that's missing from this. The last thing I wanted to be sure and share, I brought some handouts, is solar penetration, and there's enough for the community
Just keep them
members.
at the table. We can pass those out.
Okay, yeah, this shows from the Minnesota PUC's DER website, which I encourage people to go look at, that solar penetration in rural muni co-op territories is very low. Most are less than 1%. There's only 16 greater than 1%, and 3% is the greatest with My Energy. So at some point, we'll need to revisit how net metering does when penetration reaches a certain level, but I think that's around the 10% level, and we're not even close there. So,
Thank you for your testimony.
Yep, just one more thing I'd like to get in, especially with
O'Keefe, would you please come to the
the uncertainty
testifiers
at the
table?
federal level. Now
Sir,
is not a good
Do
time
you want to be
change it.
removed from the room?
What's that?
Sir, we have a lot of people in this room that are
Yeah, I know.
looking to
I just
testify
wanted to
today.
represent our members.
And if you have a piece of paper that we're willing to pass out to members, and so.
Yep, thank you.
Thank
Appreciate
you. Patty O'Keefe. And then on deck, we have Bob Blake. Thank you.
All right. Hello, committee members and Representative Baker. My name is Patty O'Keefe. I'm the Midwest Regional Director at Vote Solar, an organization advocating for equitable solar policy. No matter how it's framed, the anti-net metering bill before you today is no small deal. The solar industry and advocacy community wouldn't be here in such numbers if it didn't present a credible threat to solar. The legislation would have a chilling effect on solar and co-op territories, resulting in less solar overall, fewer bill savings, and the removal of a crucial tool for rural wealth building. For farmers specifically, with commodities being so expensive, this is one of few tools they have to control their input costs. Based on that, my main question is, why should rural businesses and communities in Minnesota get a worse deal when it comes to solar? Rural communities should have just as much freedom to choose solar and benefit from it as customers do in metro areas. The justification for this policy is the claim that net metering unfairly impacts non-solar customers. However, there are already a slew of fixed charges, such as grid access fees, that solar customers must pay to support grid maintenance and reliability. Are all utilities utilizing these grid access fees? What is the economic impact of net metering on non-solar customers? To what extent are the grid access fees doing what they are supposed to do and offsetting those costs? And what are the benefits that rooftop solar is bringing to the grid, the avoided transmission costs and capital investments? And how much money is that saving customers? I ask these questions because if you're proposing to append a program that has worked well for 40 years, there needs to be clear evidence of a problem that needs fixing.
Ms.
And
O'Keefe,
if
if
that
you would wrap up your testimony, that'd be great.
Yeah, thank you. And if that evidence exists and it's demonstrated that adjustments are needed, those adjustments should be precise and not a sweeping rollback to net metering, so as to make sure our still maturing solar market and the thousands of jobs it employs are protected. I urge you to consider these workers, your constituents, and future generations, and ask you not to approve HF 845. Thank you.
Thank you. Bob Blake and then Kim Benjamin.
Thank you, Committee and Chair. My name is Robert Blake. I am a tribal citizen of the Red Lake Nation. I'm also the owner of Solar Bear. A majority of my work that we do in tribal communities in rural Minnesota. This bill will be detrimental to the work that we do, especially in these communities that do not have a great relationship with the co-ops. And the point that I'm making here is that it seems as though that every time that we figure out a solution in our community, it seems like the goalpost is always moved. And this is another example of that, where the goalposts will be moved because we have a lot of projects that are planned to be able to put solar on top of our roofs, also solar thermal. We're also creating workforce development programs, jobs, and opportunities for our community members. This is a life and death situation in our communities. A lot of our folks are dealing with health issues as well as energy poverty. So as you can see, I'm here to represent the folks that, especially in tribal communities, that will be detrimentally affected by this particular bill. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Kim Benjamin, and then Eric Cipolla.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Kim Benjamin. I own Minnesota Solar and More. I'm a little emotional about this because I have my employees here with me today, and there's a lot of other people in the industry here today as well. I don't think people realize what this bill is. So you're going to hear from other people, so I'm just going to skip to what I know. I started Minnesota Solar in Candy, Ojai County, Dave's district. Wilmer Municipal is a great, great reference for you all to look at and for co-ops to look at. Co-ops are questioning that if there's a cost shift, they're questioning it because they don't know, they can't give the answer. How are you guys putting a bill out there that you guys cannot even give an answer on if it causes extra cost? This is crazy to me. I am upset, I'm mad. I have a bunch of notes here that I'm not even hitting on because I want to look at all of you and say, vote no today. This bill has to get something done to it. It has to go away. So Wilmer Municipal, let me bring you back there. Wilmer Municipal in 2019 got an exemption because they buy their electricity from Missouri River, which is not even a Minnesota company. So they get this tax exemption in 2019 after I put my first application to install solar on a Wilmer rooftop. When that happened, they're using this avoided cost. They're already doing it. They've been doing it since 2019. Has anyone studied that? Has anyone looked at Wilmer Municipal and said, hey, is this working for you? Well, guess what? When this bill was introduced, I then started doing my research. I called Wilmer and I said, hey, how many interconnections do you have on the grid? You know how many they have in a population of 21,000? 15. I did the first one from 2019 to 2025, 15 projects. That is 8,000 homes that that are available. That means that percentage, again, I'm not even referencing my notes. I prepared, and I can't even because I'm getting up here and I'm emotional about this, but it's a 0.002%. Wilmer wants something to change. They had to buy RECs, renewable energy credits, if you don't know what that is. They had to buy RECs. They had to spend $38,500, and guess where they bought those RECs from? Iowa, South Dakota, and even Canada, not even in the United States, they bought those RECs. Why are they not taking that and using that and going, hey, let's incentivize these customers and these homeowners to put solar on their home, and let's keep it in Minnesota. Keep our workers working. Building out Wilmer's grid. Candy Ojai Power is also in my hometown and area. I lived in New London for 20 years. This bill will crush, and I know Dave said it's not what it's intended to do, but it will crush our industry. Take California as an example. They've lost over 17,000 jobs in our industry since they put that kibosh on net metering. Avoided cost it doesn't work. Avoided cost at 2 cents a kilowatt hour is not fair. The co-ops, you know what? The people who are putting solar on their roofs, they're also your members. You should be looking at them and saying, thank you. Thank you for helping our grid. Thank you for strengthening our grid. Instead, you're putting programs in place to shut down air conditioners or make people charge the car from 11 o'clock to 7 a.m.
If you could wrap up your testimony, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. You'll give them 6 cents a kilowatt hour off of a rate, but you want to pay a solar owner 2 cents when they're investing thousands of dollars into a grid. And one last thing, I'm sorry. I don't sell to multimillionaires. I sell to middle-class people who are worried about electrical costs going up. That's the type of customer I sell to. We have an 11.2 kW as our average size system. I want you guys all to really, really think, even if your mind was already made when you walked into this room, this needs to be revisited. The grid access fees were already put in place to recoup cost. This 2 cents a kilowatt hour will crush our industry, and especially in rural Minnesota.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sipla, if you could keep, members of the audience, if you could keep your reactions to yourselves, that'd be great. Thank you. Sipla, and then Marty Morud. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Eric Sipola. I'm the owner of a smaller solar installation company called Sisu Solar that I started just 4 years ago. We just have about 5 people in my company, and we work mostly in northern Minnesota on the Iron Range, where I was born and raised. And I just want to focus on a specific story where we were able, a couple years ago, to install a solar PV system for a lovely couple in Cook, Minnesota. And the sole reason that they were able to get their solar on their house in the first place, and they even built this house several years ago specifically for solar, and after many hurdles, we were able to solely get it in because of the NEM policy for this co-op member. And after all these years, I want to just highlight the joy it brought them for being able to create a system where they could live sustainably and do their part to help with the environmental crisis we have in the world right now. And so I really just want to keep it as an option for people in rural communities. We do lots of installs in co-op areas. We want to just keep it so that they are even allowed in the first place to have a financially viable solution to add solar to their house so that they can do their part to help with the climate crisis. And yeah, I hope you all will vote to, not change these policies.
All right.
And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Marty Morud, and then Micah Johnson. You're on deck.
Good afternoon, committee members. My name is Marty Morad. I own and operate Schooner Solar. We've been in business for 15 years. In Arden Hills, I have 33 dedicated staff, and we install all over the state. The existing net metering credit, it's a fair credit, and it works, and it's going to continue working is my hope here. It creates jobs, and it attracts ratepayer investment in our grid infrastructure. We've seen this story play out in the past in other states. I tried to go all Ross Peroni and provide some charts and graphs, but they're in your materials. Check your emails. If you see what happened in 2015 in Arizona, kerplunk, no more interconnections. Nevada, 2016, same thing. Hawaii, and as recently in California in 2022, the utilities peddled this $10 billion cost shift headline. There's no math behind it. Now there's math. Also including your materials is that math. It's not a $10 billion cost to ratepayers in California. It's a $1.5 billion benefit to California ratepayers. Their math is wrong, and someone needs to check it. And I'm emotional too, because I'm worried what I'm going to have to say to my staff and my future customers and my kids. My life's mission is to make a meaningful difference in our future energy recipe. I've been doing that for 15 years. I want to continue doing that. It's tough to hear all these utility attacks and not see the math behind it. These are real people making hard decisions, trying to keep small businesses intact, trying to wade through all the tough stuff. Net metering means jobs. California lost 22% of their workforce in 6 months once NEM 3 took into effect. Interconnections went down 83% immediately. That's the kind of results you can expect from this bill.
If you could wrap up your testimony, thank you.
Net metering means business growth. Net metering means ratepayer investment into our infrastructure. Net metering means certainty, and net metering means a cost benefit for all of Minnesota. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Micah Johnson, then Alex Gast.
Hi, most of my comments have been said already, but as long as we're talking about math, I was just doing some real back-of-the-napkin stuff. We had 500 interconnections from that co-op earlier, and they charge grid access fees, and I don't know exactly the size of all their interconnections, but that's $252,000 on an average size system. that they're getting in grid co-op fees on their 500 interconnections. That math wasn't there. I thought that was interesting. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Alex Gass and then Cynthia Bennett. You're on deck.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Alex Gast. I am the COO and partner at Cedar Creek Energy, and I'm here today to just express my opposition for the bill as it's currently written. Cedar Creek Energy has over 100 employees. Our monthly payroll exceeds $1 million, and what happens here today will have a significant impact on our business and that of our employees. First and foremost, I'm here to advocate for my staff and the people who I feel I'm responsible for, right? My staff, our customers. I'm glad to hear that it won't be retroactive. That's a significant step forward. But I think there's a lot of work. And I ask that you oppose this bill as it sits today. I disagree with how the capacity definition is. There's not products to fulfill how it's currently written in the marketplace. You know, and what I'm really worried about is for Minnesota, the economic development that occurs through these systems is significant. We have purchased 2 buildings in Blaine, built them out, and have spent millions of dollars for this project, for these projects, and for this economy. And so I would ask that you oppose this today and rethink about it at the very least. So I'm welcome to any questions, and thank you guys for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alex.
Cynthia Bennett and then Casey Creech.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak today. My name is Cynthia Bennett. I am Director of Policy and Grants with Wolf River Electric in Isanti, Minnesota. Wolf River was started 10 years ago by 3 really cool entrepreneurs and have built from a lighting contractor into a solar installer, and now we install over across 5 states. And we employ over 200 people with 25 work crews on the ground. I heard earlier this morning, or this afternoon, just mention of companies with the word solar in them. And for me, that implication is that we have a lot of money and that we take advantage of our customers. And I am a member of the Goodhue County Co-op. I have lived rurally for the majority of my life. I am impassioned by supporting and serving our rural communities, our farmers, and our small businesses. I want to keep populations. I want to have reasons for kids to come back to their rural communities and serve. So we do workforce development. We work with local schools. We work with Goodwill Easter Seals. And I think that at the very least, and thank you for taking back the retroactive charges, at the very least, we would request a cost of service study to work with data. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. Casey Creech, and then on deck, Griffin Dooling.
Mr. Chair and members of the committee, my name is Casey Creech, co-founder of Everlight Solar, based in Brooklyn Park and Savage. I'm here to address HF 845 and its impact on Minnesota's clean energy future. My top concern is the provision allowing energy credits to expire at year end. In Minnesota's seasonal climate, solar customers rely on fall credits to offset winter bills. Expiring credits in December strips homeowners of these benefits, undermining solar's affordability. Our company is installed on 2,800 homes in the state. Only 36 of those generate over 110% of their annual energy usage, so the vast majority just generate what they are using. This directly opposes the clean energy goal, which commits Minnesota to 100% clean energy by 2040. HF 845 standby charges and reduced compensation also discourage solar adoption, clashing with the clean energy goal. Its vision of accessible renewable energy for all, especially low-income families. These policies risk slowing solar growth, cutting local jobs at companies like ours, and making solar less equitable, contradicting the economic and environmental goals you've championed. I urge this committee to amend HF 845, eliminate year-end credit expiration, or shift it to the spring, remove standby charges for small systems, and ensure fair compensation for excess generation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Griffin Dooling, and then Logan O'Grady, you are on deck.
Mr. Chair, ladies and gentlemen of the committee, Representative Baker, thank you for having us here today. My name is Griffin Dooling. I'm the CEO of Blue Horizon Energy. We're based in Minnetonka, Minnesota. And, you know, I've been listening to the testimony today, and I think that one of the overriding things I'm hearing is that I'm frankly appalled by the allegations that our customers are somehow ripping off their neighbors. We have completed hundreds of projects in cooperative and municipal territories over the last decade, and not a single one of those people has ever tried to profiteer and steal from their neighbors by building a solar array that's dramatically larger than what they need. I'd like to give you an example of how some of these projects work. We have a project out near Kirkhoven, Minnesota, the Gordon Farm, resident of the district of Representative Baker. That farm has multiple meters on it, one solar array. The solar array is connected to 1 meter. Therefore, on that meter, yes, they may produce more than they need at any given time on that meter, but they still only provide about 30% of their annual usage across the entire farm site. So if there is any cost shift, it's from one of Mr. Gordon's meters to the others, right? Overall, he's still contributing tens of thousands of dollars a year into the cooperative for all of the additional power that he buys, and that is not an uncommon scenario. We've asked the question, I think, repeatedly of the cooperatives and MREA and the folks that have been espousing this narrative for many years now of where is the problem? And I think we got some data today, finally. We heard that 0.1% of interconnections in ECE are apparently potentially problematic, right? How many of those are situations like Mr. Gordon, where it's a farmstead that has multiple meters, and yeah, they may sell back on one, but they're using it on others, right? I think that this data needs to be looked at, and I would ask for a study on this.
If you could kind of wrap things up, that would be great. Thank you.
Yes, sir. The other thing we heard today that I think is particularly important to consider is the cooperative stated that they can purchase utility scale solar, which is the most cost-efficient type of solar I keep hearing, at 6 cents per kilowatt hour. So why would they want to steal from their members at 2 cents per kilowatt hour at avoided cost? That makes no sense. This is a complex issue, and I would ask that we take the time to execute these changes properly, to really calibrate into this issue and do it appropriately. We appreciate the amendment that Representative Baker made today. We're concerned about some of the language, and we think this requires much more effort. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, Logan O'Grady and then Doug Nopar.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. For the record, my name is Logan O'Grady. I am the Executive Director of the Minnesota Solar Energy Industries Association. As a refresher, MNC is a 501c6 nonprofit trade association. We represent over 170 other organizations, mostly the solar installers and developers that you have seen today, working within and throughout your communities, helping your constituents lower their monthly electric bills by going solar. I want to start with some thank yous. I do want to make sure I thank Representative Baker. He welcomed us to his office the other day, and it was a great meeting. I think we made some great progress, and we appreciate the amendment, and you've committed to working with us, and we're going to do that. I want to thank Commerce as well for working with us on this issue, as well as MREA. Jenny and Derek are coming to our board meeting next month, and so we intend to discuss this with them, talk about our concerns and questions, and I think we can get to a place where we feel good about it. You know, the solar industry in Minnesota is really young when you compare it to other industries. And a symptom of being a young industry is we're kind of flying the plane as we're building it. And so when people bring me as a solar industry representative problems, I want to fix those problems. I know Representative Meckland has brought me some problems about licensure, and we figured that out. We figured out how to add solar licensing requirements to solar developers so that we can have customers who might have been wronged by solar developers have access to something that will make them whole. Representative Igo's come to me and talked to me about let's make people aware of where we're sourcing our materials for this stuff, and I think those have been really fruitful conversations. Representative Acom, we've certainly worked on a number of issues through the years, so I'm here because I want to solve, if there is a cost shift issue, I want to fix that problem because I don't want my industry to look bad. And so what I've asked for continuously, as Griffin said, show me the cost shift numbers, what they are and the extent of the problem, so we can surgically figure this out because we're flying this plane as we're building it and we don't want it to crash. And so I think if we can get to a place where we're operating in facts and data around this narrative, we will have a much better conversation. So with that, I'll just leave it there. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So the next few testifiers are online, and so Doug Nopar, if you'd want to click your mute button, if you want to share your testimony and introduce yourself to those in the building here. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, committee, for the chance to testify. I'm Doug Nopar. I'm a solar owner on a small farm south of Winona, Minnesota, Wiscoy Township, where I raise sheep and cattle. I'm a member of My Energy Co-op and have been for 40 years. I first installed solar panels on my barn roof in 2005, with expansions in 2011 and 2018. My total investment is approximately $75,000. I believe in Minnesota becoming more energy independent, and I value being part of that through producing electricity from the farm here on this, electricity from the sun here on this farm. There's nothing wrong about Minnesota being the only state in the country that pays the retail rate. Homegrown energy produced by individual farmers and landowners should be a priority. I do receive the retail rate on electricity I produce beyond what I use. That amounts to about $1,000 a year that I'm paid for electricity that goes to my neighbors. Changing the rate from retail to wholesale amounts to changing the rules in the middle of the game. It's a bad idea. We've got hundreds of My Energy members here in East Minnesota who've got solar energy systems on their farms. I know that many, like me, would oppose this change. Thanks for the chance to testify.
Thank you very much for your time. Simon Eddy, if you want to unmute yourself and introduce yourself to the committee. Thank you.
Hey, am I coming in loud and clear?
You sound great.
Okay, my name is Simon Eddy. I'm a sales consultant and grant writer for Wolf Track Energy, a locally owned solar installer in northern Minnesota. We're licensed building and electrical contractors. We have offices in Two Harbors and then also Bacchus, which is in Cass County. We have 19 total employees, 10 of which are electricians and 5 of them are young apprentices. We complete about 100 projects per year, and 58% of them are with cooperatives and munis. Just looking back at numbers from 2023 and 2024, we conservatively estimate that this the new net metering policy would have reduced our revenue by about 25%. Easily could have been more than that due to less interest and less profitable projects for these homeowners. So with my conservative estimate, it would correlate to a 25% reduction in staff and a downsize of our company. My experience being a salesperson, a few of these overbuilt systems that we've sold are most often for locations with multiple meters, complicated off-peak metering, or members with multiple accounts that aren't consolidated onto one meter, or just for farms, homes, and businesses who are planning on ramping up electrification in the next few years. We currently lease 2 warehouses. We buy equipment from Minnesota suppliers. Those warehouses are our offices as well. They're not huge. We only hire local employees who live, work, play, raise their families in northern Minnesota. We are right now seeing some serious political headwinds at the federal level. A few of our USDA grants are completely frozen, and we fear changes to the federal tax incentives. So we just really don't need to add local uncertainty to this mix. It's already hard to look a few years ahead and plan how we're supposed to grow. So thank you guys for listening to my testimony.
Thank you for your testimony. Michael Overend, if you'd want to unmute yourself and introduce yourself to the committee.
Thank you. Is this volume okay?
You sound great.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Swedzinski and committee members. I'm Michael Overend, a Two Harbors solar homeowner using net metering, which helps me make our children's world a better place. Today's hearing addresses 3 big issues. Number 1, net metering pinches Minnesota cooperatives and municipal utilities between the regular electricity providers and home solar energy producers. Number 2, electrifying homes and businesses, plus new EVs, data centers, and artificial intelligence are all rapidly increasing electricity demand. Number 3, reaching Minnesota's 2040 goal of 100% clean electricity needs a creative, all of the above solution, including increasing home solar and storage everywhere. Amending net metering rates will lower homeowners' solar production revenue, making long payback periods worse and discouraging the increased new home solar we truly need by 2040. An important idea for your committee is how virtual power plants can uniquely help address all these problems. Virtual power plants offer a new alternative revenue source for home solar while supporting Minnesota's solar industry. Virtual power plants also reliably benefit utilities and their customers with decreased peak energy costs and major savings for grid infrastructure. Finally, I'm going to suggest a Minnesota state tax credit on home solar and storage installations, and amended net metering revenue would also help support this critical energy resource. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Kay Slama, if you want to unmute yourself and introduce yourself to the committee. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, if maybe get a little tighter to your mic, potentially.
I'll just speak louder. Chair Swedinski, committee members, and Representative Baker, my name is Kay Slama, and I'm a volunteer with the Sierra Club North Star chapter. I live between Spicer and New London, where I am a member owner of Candio High Power Cooperative. We in the Wilmer Area Climate Action Group have been trying for years to persuade our co-op to give us greener electricity, including net metering, in place of fossil fuels. They've been resisting, mostly because their power provider, Great River Energy, convinces them that solar and wind power somehow cost more. I oppose the changes to net metering in HF 845. There would be some serious unfairness in this bill. Why would you want to keep our rural towns and people who are producing electricity from receiving the same net metering rate as the big public utilities in metro areas? This bill would harm people in greater Minnesota who have installed solar panels. Rural families, farmers, and small businesses should get the same economic value from producing solar and wind energy as those in more urban areas, so we can build wealth in our rural communities too. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Thank you. That is all the list that we have for testifiers. Is there anyone from the public? I believe we have Stu Laurie from Minnesota Farmers Union, if you'd want to approach the table. If there's anyone else, just make your way up and we'll try to squeeze you on. Thank you. If you'd introduce yourself for the committee, thanks.
Thank you, Chair Swedzinski and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Stu Laurie, Government Relations Director for Minnesota Farmers Union. Thank you for the opportunity to testify despite missing the sign-up deadline. And briefly, and this is consistent with our policy and direction from our leadership, I wanted to share our opposition to HF 845. I'll talk about a couple things that maybe add to the conversation and work to do so briefly. But in general, we're excited about opportunities for our members to diversify their farm income going forward. As you know well, Mr. Chair, farming's unpredictable, and if we can provide farmers the opportunity to have something that is predictable in their energy cost and diversify that farm income, that only helps. Second, and more broadly, we're excited to see more distributed generation. I was just reviewing our policy on solar, and our members are excited to see more in their community, whether on their farm or not, edge of field developments, rooftop, things where solar developments where it can complement agricultural production. So we're interested in maintaining the current law and preserving this opportunity for our members. I'll end by saying thank you to MREA for taking the opportunity to meet with us. We hugely appreciate that. It's no secret that we share some leaders in our organization, and I'll also thank you for the amendment today. That's a concern that we've heard from members, and we really appreciate it. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you. Any questions? Do we have any member discussion? Representative Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a number of questions. Maybe first to Representative Baker. Thank you for bringing this bill. I'm actually really excited for the opportunity to be able to talk about our incentive structure for distributed energy. So I think that's great, and I think we can agree that that's not perfect. But I do have concerns about this bill, but I think there are things that we can work on in our distributed energy incentive structure. Mr. Black, I think, brought up a good question about what is the problem that we're trying to solve here. And I still don't feel like we have a good answer for that. I think in particular, some of the munis and co-ops, they brought up basically what they're seeing as the costs that are being spread to other members, but they're not bringing up the grid access fees. And so, can you help me understand? Would those grid access fees be kept alongside the changes happening here?
Representative Baker.
Mr. Chair and Representative Jones, I don't know. That's up to the muni or co-op to make those decisions. I think once they can make those decisions internally, the gist of this bill is trying to right-set this very good technology that is now well-tested. It's getting better as it goes forward. The panels are getting cheaper and more efficient. But I think what I'm having the biggest need to do with this bill is to sit down and let's get the balance right so that it's actually better for everybody. I'm a small business guy. I don't want to see one lost job because of any bill that I'm never going to touch. And I say that because people that know me, I'm not trying to kid around that. I'm trying to put my money where my mouth is. I think that if we get this balance right, there won't be so much pushback from folks that are concerned about bringing retail back on the grid when we don't have to do retail. Let's find another way to do this. So I'm committed to making sure that we talk about those things, but what we're trying to solve is, as this industry is evolving, getting better, 10 years, 15 years later, when this is really kind of getting off the ground, we better take a look at this now, because down the road it's going to get harder and harder and harder. We got to figure this out now. And it hasn't been heard in 4 years in this committee. Maybe it's been more, I'm not sure, Mr. Chair, but I want to talk about this, and I'm grateful that I got to carry the bill, because I'm committed to making sure that it works for everybody, because I want to promote business. But I also want to make sure that it's a fair rate for the neighbors on the co-op and the munis, that it's a fair rate that everybody can get behind, because nobody is really going to be subsidizing someone else. That's what I'm trying to get to, Representative Jones.
Representative Jones, follow up.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Baker, Representative Baker, excuse me. Still getting used to this process. So I really appreciate your commitment to no lost jobs with this bill and moving forward. And so I think I hear where you're coming from, where it's like we need to get ahead of a potential issue. And so I think we heard from a number of testifiers, the scale of the issue right now is very small, very minuscule. ECE mentioned that it's less than 1% of customers even have solar, and then it's 10% of those that might potentially be experiencing this problem. So I want us to make sure we're not trying to, working too quickly, that we inadvertently harm an industry that hasn't actually grown sufficiently yet. I think it's useful to also compare it to other industries that are being promoted and we're wanting to grow for the cleanliness of our air and clean environment. And so, we've got most of these utilities have less than 1% of penetration of solar. For comparison, EVs are about 5% penetration, and we're still, promoting them and encouraging them with incentives. So I think that just goes to show our market hasn't matured quite yet. If we're still, supporting that, I think we're still going to need to support solar as well. I had another question around particularly, the California story. I've been reading about that for the last year or so. What are we doing to avoid that experience of 17,000 jobs lost?
Representative Baker.
Mr. Chair, I don't know this California story that well. I don't know. I don't care. I care about Minnesota. I care about what we get right here in Minnesota for our policy. If we overbuild industries, they right-size themselves because of supply and demand. That's what we do. That's what we should be doing. If we're overcharging, people won't buy something. If we undercharge and we're subsidizing, it's going to be falsely accelerated in a rate that's going to be somebody else is going to pay for that. That's what subsidies are. Again, I don't know the California story. If we want to call up somebody else that can speak to that, I'm happy to do that. I'm just trying to make sure that as our industry evolves, and you're saying that it's very small right now, it is, which is reason why we do this now, because we understand it a lot better today than we did 10 years ago. So whether it's 1% now or 5% or 10%, I don't care. I want to make sure that we get it right now, because I still believe, and to my good friend Kim Benjamin, when she talked about Candy Co-op, talking to their CEO the other day about if we get this in a way that they can all get behind it, I see all the co-ops around Minnesota really promoting this industry better than they ever have before, because right now there's no reason for them to want to accelerate this, because they see it as a pain to their neighbors. If we can get those partners on board, that's where I see this going. I see this as actually helping the industry, growing it, but then it's more fair to everybody. So I would, and again, to my CEO back with Candy Co-op Power, he's going to put links on the website where you can find a developer who they can partner with. That's what they want to do. That's where I see this going. And so, but we've got to get the numbers right so that we're not overcharging or putting retail value back on the grid for anything. That's why, again, I am a solar promoter, but I don't want to see artificially high rates going back on any grid, whether it's a community solar garden or the small scale stuff. It should not go back on the grid if it's not somehow using a better value of that rate, so that it doesn't penalize or hurt others. So this is not what that's talking about as community solar. We're talking about this stuff right here. It's important to get this right. So again, I'm sorry, long answer. I don't understand the California mission, but I want to get Minnesota's right.
Representative Jones.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Representative Baker. I appreciate the focus on Minnesota. Obviously, that's why we're here. We want to make sure that our market works here. I think it's also valuable that we're not reinventing the wheel. And so I'm wondering if I can get your commitment to looking at that case and making sure that we're learning from that so that we don't make the same mistake here.
Well, and just maybe I can just add to the conversation a little bit, so as we're, contemplating this bill before us, we also have to ask the questions, why did the law get changed in California as well? And one of the concerns is where we are going is to where they are. And they already figured out that in California, they needed to get rid of a policy that is very closely related to the one we have in Minnesota. And while I appreciate the conversation, but that should be pretty resounding. We talk about the 17% lost jobs. You need to talk about the costs on consumers, the costs on business, the costs around the communities that even California figured out that it was time to pause the program. And that's why this bill is before the committee. So Representative Baker.
Again, this bill is a big bill to handle. I knew this was a lot of work when I took it on. I don't think we're quite done with it. I think we've got to continue to work on it. You know what? I can't pass this bill off the House floor unless I have some of your help. I understand that. But also, the bottom line is I'm not going to put our munis and co-ops at a disadvantage any longer for rates that are going to be higher than they ought to be on the grid. That's a hard line for me. And I will continue, and you have my commitment. We're going to continue to work on this, Representative Jones, and anybody else who wants to do this. I want to see a number of my DFL colleagues to get behind this because it makes sense for greater Minnesota who have the co-ops, who need to make this work, and who are also you're going to be convinced that this actually will help those businesses grow, because more of the producers of the energy out there, the member-owned co-ops, are going to get behind this even better, stronger than they are today.
Representative Jones, anything else?
Yes, this should be my last comment for now. Representative Baker, thank you for that. I also want this to work for the co-ops and for the munis. I understand that they're member-owned and there's lots of value in that. And I'm wondering if we can broaden the conversation around virtual power plants, around lifting the cap, because I think about a number of schools that have opportunity to put solar on, and they want to do net metering, but they're capped at 40 kW. But we could get so much more value, and especially for those public entities, in that space. And so I'm wondering if you're willing to broaden this conversation to things like that.
Representative Baker.
Mr. Chair, Representative, I'm not interested in talking about caps at this point. I think we've got a good bill with a good capacity. It's focused in on this level. But again, everything else that we want to talk about regarding this bill on this general framework is something that I'm willing to work on. So let's get started on this. I would encourage others to maybe drop their own bill if they want to talk about bigger systems.
All right. Representative Jones, are you, okay. Representative Kraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Representative Baker. I guess first off, just a comment and then some questions. One is, it's important to understand that when someone produces solar, and if it's more than what they're using, we say it goes on the grid. Yes, but what happens is, electrons just flow to where they're the easiest place. So generally what's happening is if you got neighbors that are needing some electricity, those electrons from someone that's producing a bit more solar is going to them. And my problem with the avoided cost bit is that I don't think it properly takes into account the value to everyone there, and also the value and resiliency and things around the grid. So that's just a comment on as we talk about this. Representative Baker, the question I would have for you is, I don't think you do, but do you want to kill the solar industry here?
Representative Baker.
Mr. Chair, of course not. I made that very clear.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Baker, so there was a situation.
Representative Kraft.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Chair. Representative Baker, there was a situation described of, I think it was Mr. Gordon's farm, where there's a solar array that's connected to a single meter, but there's multiple meters on that farm. And that situation, I understand from talking to some folks, is not uncommon. That happens quite a bit. Would your bill cause a problem with that situation? Would it shut that individual down? That maybe they have a 40 kW system and only 10 kW of usage on one meter, but 50 or 60 elsewhere. Would that harm them?
Representative Baker, if you want to,
I might phone a friend, Mr. Chair.
There's some folks from the co-ops. If you want to come forward, there's someone.
I think I know the answer, but I'm gonna phone a friend here. But I think you're gonna like the answer, Representative Kraft, because I asked that same question. For my constituents out in my area, that's a big deal. And here's the answer, and I hope it's what we're gonna hear. So, go ahead.
Mr. Johns, if you'd introduce yourself just quickly.
Justin Johns, East Central Energy. I can't speak for the other co-ops, but on our co-op, we do have larger installations that we do kind of bundle their meter usage, apply the solar output to all of those meters, and so essentially those kilowatt hours would be applied to all of their services.
Representative Kraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'd like to call up if there's a representative from MREA and MMUA up for a question. They're directly related to this, because I appreciate that. Is it Mr.
Representative
Johns?
Kraft asks if someone from the MREA could come forth. Is that what you were, or MNUA?
MREA, MMUA. I think it's this bill was initiated out of MREA.
Sounds good. Yeah. Representative Kraft.
So that was fantastic to hear from East Central Energy that they can aggregate meters. My question is, can all of your members aggregate meters? And if not, then can we commit that that would be a modification to the bill?
If you'd introduce yourself to the committee, and then with your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Derek Moe, the CEO of Minnesota Rural Electric Association. Appreciate Representative Baker and the committee taking time to hear this important issue. The issue of aggregation is actually spelled out in statute. Not far after, I forget all the numbers, but it's not exactly the same area of statute that we're modifying, and so it would be left intact to allow cooperatives to do the kinds of things and require cooperatives to do the kinds of things that Justin just described as an example.
Representative Kraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't think, Mr. Moe, that that's quite what I was asking. You said they can do it. I'm asking you how many of your members do it. I don't know. If they all do it, then maybe this isn't as much of an issue as Mr. Dooling raised. But I'm asking, can all of your members do this?
Mr. Moe?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Kraft, the statute, as I understand it, does require that aggregation be allowed in the kinds of examples you're discussing there. So yes, we would be doing that across the cooperatives, that if you have multiple meters with load at multiple buildings on your site, on your contiguous site, that you could aggregate those meters, which would be very important in determining what amount of load you're offsetting and still getting full retail net metering compensation for.
Representative Kraft, we also have Bob Eloff here, if you'd want to maybe direct a question of that sort to our fine gentleman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Whoever said today that this is a very complex question is definitely right. And this is unfortunately, one of the more complex statutes in the energy statute book. I didn't think about this until this gentleman just stepped up and started talking about aggregation, but I'm looking at subdivision 4A in the net metering law, aggregation of meters, and it only speaks to aggregation by public utilities. I don't see anything in here that requires or mentions co-ops and munis with respect to aggregation. I may be missing something, and please tell me if I do.
Representative Kraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Representative Baker, if this is the case that there's this hole in here, would you agree that we will make a modification to your bill? And by the way, where is this bill going? Is we laying it over?
Representative Kraft, the bill's motion is to go to the general register.
Okay. I'll have a question about that in a bit. Given the importance here that we've heard, this is a fairly common occurrence. Do I have your commitment that we will change your bill to make sure that co-ops and munis are required to do that aggregation?
Representative Baker?
Mr. Chair, again, this is a very technical kind of a bill question. What I've been told is that the aggregate is what is in law now. I'm committed to making sure that we clear up the language and we make sure that we talk to all the partners at this. So it'll be part of the discussions that we will have moving forward, Mr. Kraft. Representative Kraft, I can't tell you what they can and can't do or what each one of them is doing. They are their own business model, and I don't want to overstep my voice, but I will tell you this will be part of the conversation going forward to have this clarified.
Representative Kraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Baker, I appreciate that. I think this is critical to be clarified, and not just that one can do it, but that there's a commitment to do it if we're going down a path like this. I really appreciate your the reasons you've stated to bring this forward, and I appreciate the sentiment you said. What you said sounds very good, wanting to protect to make sure people aren't unfairly charged one way or the other. However, my concern is that what is being proposed here, based on what's happened in other states, would dramatically reduce solar development in Minnesota. And so my question is, maybe for you or maybe for some others, is what are you proposing to replace that with?
Representative Baker?
Are we just going to have less solar, or do you have what are we going to replace that with?
Mr. Chair, I think what I mentioned earlier was if we have a more fair system for everybody, both the investor who wants to put solar on their roof at a lower price today than it was 10 years ago, at a higher output, a better efficiency than it did 10 years ago. And if we've got a partnership with the co-ops and the folks that are actually distributing power to everybody 24/7, no matter what, if those partners are working together, I think the future of solar has never looked better. That is how I see the business model work. I think people will want to grow it further. I have a feeling this is actually going to be the right way. I guess I have a feeling it doesn't really work sometimes in the business world, but as a business owner who's a risk taker, if I were seeing this, I would think that this is something that I'd want to be one of the first solar developers to start getting relationships with the co-ops that are looking for partnerships. That's what I'm hoping would happen. But again, I'm not a developer. I'm a hospitality guy. But I think in business, that's what I'd like to see happen.
Representative Kraft, I think we can stay here till maybe 2:55, and then otherwise we'll be coming back at 5 o'clock. We have the room reserved. So Representative Kraft.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Representative Baker, I've been looking at this area as well, and I think that the co-ops and munis have some points here. Right? I will grant you that. But my concern here, and you just said, I have a feeling this is going to work. You've also said it's important to get this right. You don't know the California story. I would ask you, would you support a motion to table this so that we can work on it? And the reason is and I'd be committed to work with you in a very upfront and serious way on this, because I see it as an issue too. I see the issue maybe a bit more broadly. I don't like when we start deploying solar somewhere and when there's more capacity that we set an artificial limit to stop it, right? I don't think that's in the best interest of society. Now, I understand why, because you would be careful about how much cost and things you're putting on folks. So I think there's a problem here of getting these incentives right for both sides. But when you have one side saying, I really want to do this, and the other side saying emphatically they don't, and they have examples of how this has really destroyed markets in other places, I think we need more time on this to get it right. And I think this bill, I appreciate the sentiment of it, but I think it is incredibly uncreative of what we need to do here to actually get this right so we can have growth as well as satisfy the concerns that the co-ops have. So I would ask you, would you support a motion to table this and work more on it?
Representative Baker?
Mr. Chair, no, I don't think that's necessary, Representative Kraft, and I've been here long enough to tell you this. We don't need to table a bill to keep working on it. We can keep working on it as it moves on to the next step. And not if it's Ways and Means or on the General Register, it doesn't matter. It isn't going to get passed off the House floor until we have bipartisan support. I'm committed to working on it wherever it sits. So I think for me, I don't think we need to table the bill. We're already 24 days behind this session because we didn't get started on time. That is a real problem for me. And I think the colleagues that were here, we need to keep moving with this thing. Let's get it done with this committee. I don't chair this committee, but Representative Swedzinski does. I think we need to move this forward, but my commitment is no different if it was tabled or if it was sitting on the House floor. We have to keep working on this, and my commitment is to do that.
And Representative Baker, just as the chair of this committee, I know that you're a thoughtful representative. You take the balance of power and legislative activity very seriously, and as chair of this committee, I would probably concur in that same line that if there was an author of a bill that has a wider, opener door than Representative Baker, you do have that open door. So I would encourage folks to continue to reach out to the author of this bill, and it's my intention that we do move this bill on, and along as with your commitment, Representative Baker, to continue to look at the bill. And this isn't a fledgling conversation either, Representative Kraft. This is a conversation that has been going on for a decade in the state of Minnesota. And, one of the things that we really do need to realize is this is a foundational bill when it comes to who are we dealing with? What does this bill target? And this targets municipalities, and it targets electrical co-ops. And one of the things that I've realized in my short time here in St. Paul is rooms just like this forget over and over and over again that cooperatives, electric groups are locally elected. And I think everyone in this room needs to realize that St. Paul does not know best when it comes to these rules and regulations, that maybe these folks out in these cooperatives might actually have a decent opinion about an issue like this. They may not claim to have the super expertise when it comes to it, but they understand when you charge more through St. Paul rules than the market dictates, that someone's going to pay for it. That might be your neighbor, that might be your church, that might be the businessman up the road, but that's the reality that this conversation has laid bare over a decade here in the state of Minnesota. And I appreciate Representative Baker's approach, a calm hand to create a piece of legislation that can gain bipartisan support. And it's my understanding it does have bipartisan support. It has signatures in the Senate on both sides of the aisle. So I would encourage that. Representative Kraft.
I'm done.
All right, thank you. Representative Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm wondering if I could ask a couple of questions of two of the testifiers, Solissa Polish and Gabe Chan. They're still here.
Mr. Chan, if you'd want to approach and introduce yourself to the committee. Thank you.
My name is Gabe Chan from the University of Minnesota.
Awesome.
Representative Jones, to your question.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Chan, you in your testimony, you talked about the value of solar and how it's different from avoided cost. I'm wondering if you could help us understand the differences between those two.
Sure. Thank you.
Mr. Chan.
Thank you, Chair. The value of solar was passed in statute in 2013. It was then implemented by the Department of Commerce to include different value streams that solar provides to the utility, to customers, and to society. It includes the avoided cost of building new generation. It includes avoiding fuel to run that generation. It includes avoiding transmission infrastructure, avoiding distribution infrastructure, and avoiding environmental externalities, both local air pollutants and carbon.
Representative Jones.
Yeah, thank you. And Mr. Chan, I'm also wondering, so the value of solar includes a whole lot of things, and the avoided cost includes just that one piece of, like, okay, whether or not, and it's usually based off of, so it's around 2 cents, and that's kind of, can you explain a little bit more where that avoided cost comes from? Because I don't want to mess it up.
Mr. Chan.
Thank you, Chair. The avoided cost is typically based off of avoided wholesale energy, usually with a small capacity adder, for solar is usually very tiny. And so it's essentially an energy-only wholesale energy avoided cost.
Representative Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Chan, and what is that number typically? I mean, I've heard that it's typically like the cost to turn on, or the incremental cost to procure more gas, like, and put that on the line. Is that in any way accurate?
Mr. Chan.
Thank you. I think the close approximation, an avoided cost is an avoided real-time, instantaneous avoided cost, whereas what the value of solar was trying to capture was an avoided long-term value, thinking about over the entire lifetime of a solar project, what are all of those values, not just within the utility system, but again, to society and to customers as well. And so it's a much both longer-term perspective and a more societal perspective, whereas avoided cost really is about that avoided energy in real time.
Representative Jones.
Yeah, awesome. Mr. Chair, thank you, Mr. Chan. Yeah, I think you really hit a nail on the head there, that the difference in the wholesale, so the avoided cost being wholesale energy, that's that instantaneous, versus the value of solar is more that long-term value. And I think that's where I'd really love for the conversation to continue going, Representative Baker, so that we can continue to provide that long-term value for our communities. And so a question for Ms. Polish. I think you had mentioned, so that the cap, the 40 kW, do you know where that 40 kW, in this, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but you happen to know where the 40 kW came from, and maybe where the initial thinking might be from that?
Ms. Polish.
Chair Swazinski, Representative
You want to
Jones.
get a little tighter to that mic.
Thank you.
Thanks.
No.
Okay. And if Madam Mrs. Jones, maybe I could, Representative Jones, I believe that was from the federal side. So my guess is, the rural development grants that were created from the federal government, I believe they had an initial number that was the cutoff line when it came to whether it was a local or not. But I think we could have Mr. Eloff speak to that as well if you'd like to.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, the why questions, or the where did this come from questions, are very difficult to answer, especially of a law that was enacted 40 years ago here in Minnesota. I don't know the answer either, frankly, but 40 is what we've got to work with. I do know, though, that the federal law of which Minnesota's law is implementing, the PURPA, the Public Use Regulatory Policies Act, which was passed in 1978, actually used a number of 80 megawatts. But we've got 40 in various places in this act, and I'm not sure how that came about either.
Sounds good. Representative Jones, we probably have some research to do. So, yeah. Representative Jones.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Polish, I had another question around do you have some rationale around why to move it up to 1 megawatt?
Chair Swazinski, Representative
Ms.
Jones.
Polish. It's all good.
We're trying to get this right.
We're doing great. Great.
The existing statute as it relates to investor-owned utilities, has a category that goes up to 1 megawatt. And so this would just take it in line with that existing statute for other existing utilities.
Representative Jones.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's helpful to understand, like, standardization. I think most folks can agree that there's value there. And would a 1 megawatt cap then facilitate solar on things like schools? I don't have a really good understanding of size and capacity, and so I'm wondering if you could help illuminate that.
Ms. Polish.
Chair Swedzinski. Representative Jones. Yes. I mean, that is, I think, the essential idea is that it could be then sized to whatever load that might be up to 1 megawatt and allow for those larger systems where it would make sense for that to be the usage profile. Every school will be different. Every school building will be different, just like every farm, every business will be different, but it would allow for flexibility in that way.
Representative Jones.
Thank you. No further questions.
All right, thank you. Representative Acom.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the really robust discussion today. I will say I thank the author of the bill, Representative Baker, for offering an amendment today. I don't think that it's going quite far enough, but it's a step certainly in the right direction. And because of his interest in communicating and engaging with stakeholders, with us as legislators around concerns, it's the reason we didn't offer amendments today. And I think, honestly, the time was better spent hearing from testifiers about what we're actually seeing on the ground in our communities all across our state. And we certainly heard about the complicated nature of this statute, and I certainly would agree with that. When we have avoided costs rates, when we have average retail rates, when Professor Chan brought up the value of solar, I think that these are all really important details that matter. And when we talk about the value of solar and the value it adds to all of us, and the work that went into developing that rate and that formula, had a ton of engagement on it, and it recognizes that we all share in reduced fuel costs because of the value of solar. We all share in a reduction in fixed and variable operation and maintenance costs. We have generation capacity costs that are minimized and reduced, reserve capacity costs, transmission capacity costs that are reduced, as well as distribution capacity costs that are reduced. So there is a value to having solar. And so I think that if I just asked Mr. Eloff what the value of solar cost is today or this year, and it's 10.58 cents. So the value of solar to all of us is 10.58 cents per kilowatt hour. And in stark contrast to the avoided cost rate of what I'm hearing is 2 cents per kilowatt hour, I think that we can all see that they aren't in line with that. We know that all of our co-ops and munis are going to be required to meet 100% clean energy goals, and by doing anything to reduce our interest and the activity in this area is only going to be a problem. And to hear about districts such as your own or co-ops such as your own that are having to spend money to buy renewable energy credits from Iowa rather than utilizing homegrown sun is, to me, a questionable practice, and I think needs to be considered. I think we heard a lot of important data, and that maybe there's a lack of transparency around co-ops data in regards to projects that are implemented, whether aggregated metering is actually happening. We certainly see a need for it. And so because of all of these things, I'm going to be a no today and certainly encourage my members to vote no. I take you at your word that you're willing to work on this, and I think you do recognize that this isn't going to go anywhere without some pretty dramatic work. And while I know you said that caps are off the table, I think in the conversation, we need to be recognizing not only rates, but size of projects and caps. And so as we go forward, I hope that we can have a good dialogue back and forth with some meaningful movement on this bill. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative Baker. Representative Baker, to your bill.
Is this wrap-up time, Mr. Chair?
Yes, it is.
All right, no other questions?
Roll call being asked for. We'll be taking a roll call when we get to it.
Thank
Representative
you.
Baker.
And thank you. Again, I want to thank the members for a great conversation. I want to really thank the testifiers for, I took a whole bunch of notes here. And I think anybody that has worked with me, whether you brought me a bill, whether you are opposed to a bill, I want to get it right because I don't care what you think, because I get to be the state representative that gets to write my bill. And I'm going to try to do my very, very best to make sure that my dear friend Kim and Dave, her business partner, are not going to be hurt by this kind of a thing. Because I want solar to do really well in Minnesota, but I do not want it to be on the backs of anybody else. My members, I'm a co-op member. I don't want to see this hurt other members that don't have the ability to invest in these things. Solar has come a long ways. I am committed. I think you guys have heard that. I am a business person, and I know it's super scary. In the world today of trying to run a business with more mandates coming from the state of Minnesota on how to write your handbooks, to how policies affect your product that you're trying to sell, this all adds up to a really scary time when in Minnesota we need to make sure we do everything to try to help business. And that's my commitment, is if I need to help business, at the same time we need to make sure that we don't hurt residents with higher than any rate should be. We need to get this thing right. So, Mr. Chair, with that, I really do appreciate the committee's support for my bill.
Thank you, Representative Baker. Representative Baker renews his motion that House File 845, as amended, be placed on the general register. A roll call being asked for. The clerk will take the roll.
Chair Swedzinski.
Aye.
Vice Chair Murphy.
Aye.
Lead Acom.
No.
Representative Kraft.
No.
Representative Anderson.
Anderson, aye.
Representative Baker.
Aye.
Representative Carroll. No. Representative Frazier.
No.
Representative Hollins.
No.
Representative Igo.
Aye.
Representative Mahamud.
No.
Representative Jones.
No.
Representative Meckland.
Aye.
Representative Sexton.
Yes.
Representative Weiner.
There being 8 ayes and 7 nays, the bill is passed and the bill is on its way to the general register. Members, our next meeting will be Tuesday, February 25th. This meeting is adjourned.